the time when it happened, they just branded her a prostitute and a druggie, and she were only 13.
Should be Ahmed. He was an Oldham Labour member, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, very in with the Labour Party. Although he did all his abuse in Rochdale, like I said, for 2 years, Oldham Council had him on the welfare section while he was under investigation for raping girls.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point I want to touch on more, actually. So he was, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, between 1988, and they say 2006, but I can only find evidence of him being fired in 2008. So between 1988 and 2008, he was employed by Oldham Council as what was it, a welfare rights officer?
Yeah, but I think he only did about 3-4 years around the Oldham Council time, but 2 of them years he was under investigation.
Yeah, so he was under investigation in 2005 with Greater Manchester Police failing to notify the council. Even though, and this is the problem, even when they were alerted, right? Oldham Council were alerted. They made no sufficient checks, no sufficient inquiries to see if he'd been working with vulnerable adults and children. And then we find out he's actually raped a kid, that a vulnerable child that he was working with while employed as a welfare rights officer and while under investigation.
Yeah, you couldn't make it up. That's the kind of silence there is within the Labour Party. And you know what? Some council members who are serving now would have known all about Shabir Ahmed, because he was well in the top league of like the Pakistani community. They would have known, and they're still serving on the council. I'm not going to say who, but we could easily find this information out. But you know, that's what's happening. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Have you got any kind of horror stories of survivors that you're willing to share on camera without naming any names, that just kind of describe the horrifying experience?
Well, I mean, kidnapping, just picking these girls up and kidnapping them and them staying away for 2 days or whatever, and no one asking questions. And when we look into it, that happens a lot with the girls across all these kind of incidents. I have been told about torture, cigarette burning and stuff like that. But the main thing was drugs and alcohol. That was a really big main thing that was used on the girls, and that to get them compliance. But I mean, some of the horror stories are like to do with the police. When the review first came up 2 years ago, a girl contacted me and she had an interview with the police the next day. So she went to the interview, she come back crying on phone. In the interview, and from the time when it happened, they just branded her a prostitute and a druggie, and she were only 13.